Hello again, and welcome to our panel about neurominorities in the workplace. I'm Andrew Eddy, CEO of Untapped. Our panel discussion will be moderated by Shae Wissell, CEO of the Dear Dyslexic Foundation. This is Shae. Before I hand over to Shae, I would like to let you know that you have the opportunity to submit questions for our panel by typing your questions into the Q&A pane. You can access that pane by clicking on the Q&A tab on the right-hand side of your screen. Other people's questions will appear in your Q&A pane once they've been approved by our moderators. If you like a question and are keen to hear it answered, you can give it an upvote by clicking on the arrow beside it. We will try to answer as many questions as possible, but depending on how many come through, we may not be able to get through them all. Okay, that's enough from me. Please take it away, Shae.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you everyone for joining us for this exciting session this afternoon. Before I start though, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of all the different lands that we're meeting on today and to pay my respects to elders both past, present and emerging. So once again, thank you for joining us. I'm Shae Wissell and I'm the CEO and founder of the Dear Dyslexic Foundation. And I was diagnosed with dyslexia and dysgraphia when I was 27 while I was doing my master's degree. So I'm super excited to be here moderating today and talking to these three wonderful women that we have with us, Beck, Tammy and Autumn, who are all going to share their experiences of what it's like to be neurodivergent or be part of a neurominority group within the workplace. So thank you ladies for joining me this afternoon.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
So as I mentioned, I was diagnosed with dyslexia and dysgraphia at the age of 27, and I've had now 16 years work experience across the not-for-profit and health sectors. And during that time, it's been quite a bumpy road for me. And that's what led me to establish the Dear Dyslexic Foundation. So we're going to hear a little bit from the ladies around what their workplace experiences have been like and when they were diagnosed, because what we've found, particularly with dyslexia, is there are a lot of people that are diagnosed either later in secondary school through to university, and a lot of people are being diagnosed actually in adulthood. So I might start with Autumn. Would you like to give us a little bit of an idea about when you were diagnosed and a little bit about yourself?
Okay. Hi, everyone out there in the world. It's nice to have you here listening to us. So my name's Autumn and I have a whole range of issues. So let me list them for you. You might be recognizing yourself in this list. I've got autism, dyslexia, dyscalculia, depression, the mild version apparently, dysthemia. When you have it though, it doesn't feel mild. What's considered mild mania, and I have stuttering and tics, and I have anxiety. Woohoo! Probably have other things as well, but you know, the list is only as long as the list is when you have the chance to get them diagnosed. Anyway, so all these things you might think, wow, this is really complicated and hard to deal with. Yes, it is, but it's also good to know. And it's good to recognize those things in yourself. I was diagnosed with the learning disabilities when I was 7, but my family completely shunned it. So I didn't get any help whatsoever. None at school, no one believed me. It was really awful. And I was diagnosed with autism when I was 37. And again, no help, but people did believe me because when you're old, when you're old, sorry everyone else who's old, there isn't really no help, and particularly because I'm considered high functioning. And I think high functioning is really a label for people who mask very well. Maybe someone else has different perspectives on this, but I don't think I'm necessarily higher functioning than other people. Job-wise, I work for Be Your Best, and I have 2 main jobs there. I create the vision for the curriculum, doing professional and personal development courses for neurodivergent adults, and I also manage a big team of neurodivergents and just mentor them and guide them in their careers, which I love doing.
And we've had some great conversations about the work you've been doing, Autumn, and it's just so exciting to see what you've been doing and to hear about it. So thank you for introducing yourself. Might ask Beck now if she could introduce herself for us.
Sure. Hi, everyone. So my name's Beck. I'm a lecturer at La Trobe Uni. I work in the Department of Psychology and Counselling, and I'm a teaching and research academic. So I teach into our undergraduate psychology course. I supervise research students and I conduct research myself. I have ADHD and so I'm 35 and I was diagnosed 2 years ago. I suspect that I also have dyspraxia, and I've kind of got some professionals who agree with me there, but I found it really challenging to find a pathway to diagnosis as an adult. So yeah, I was diagnosed after my PhD, and it was really after a period of a number of years of really looking into, I knew I was different, but I didn't know how. I actually worked with a lot of autistic adults and friends and family members who said to me, something about you, you're neurodivergent, I'm sure of it, but I'm not quite, they couldn't put their finger on it, I couldn't put my finger on it. I kind of suggested to a few people who worked in psychology that I thought I might have ADHD, and was kind of like, of course you don't have ADHD. And so I think that it was really challenging to get a diagnosis. Once I did find a practitioner who had expertise in the area, it was very obvious to them that I was an ADHDer. And so I think I'm, I guess, really privileged to be able to receive a diagnosis as an adult, because I feel like it was only because I could access the academic literature to learn about what ADHD looked like in adults, access the DSM, look for practitioners and spend the money on a diagnosis that I could receive them. Since having received the diagnosis, every day I learn something new about myself, and it's just so clear to me that I've always, of course I've always had ADHD, but everything makes so much more sense now. So I have a lot of energy. I'm very optimistic, sometimes perceived as naive or overly optimistic, but it's very genuine. I love to talk, so I've got a little timer on me now, so I won't go over. I have terrible time perception. I'm overly optimistic about time. I need to plan things very carefully and to stay organized, have everything very clearly visually organized. And I can be really overwhelmed by too much sensory stimuli, because it's really a condition of difficulty of self-regulation, of executive functioning, attention, impulse control, task initiation, planning, prioritizing, emotional control, things like that. I'm really so glad to be here today and talk with these lovely ladies about being a neurominority in the workplace. So that's me. Thanks, Shae.
Thanks so much, Beck, and really interesting your history around having a diagnosis as an adult, because I think sometimes for people when they're diagnosed later in life, it can either be a revelation like you've spoken about and something really positive, and sometimes it can be really difficult for people as they try to navigate what that label means. And neurodiversity and neurominorities are such a hot topic in the workplace at the moment. So I'm really grateful for you sharing your experience so far. Thank you. And we've got the lovely Tammy. Welcome, Tammy.
Thank you, and hi everyone. It really is great to be involved in this panel. I am a late diagnosed autistic, ADHD and dyslexic with auditory processing disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder and chronic health conditions. I was formally diagnosed for the first time. I've gone in twice as autistic at the age of 39, and I discovered all of the others in the year that I turned 46. So I've certainly lived a long time not quite figuring out things in my life. I'm also a parent to 2 young adults who are neurodivergent, and being one of the many adults that have that more, I guess, subtle presentation of neurodivergence, I was missed throughout my childhood and education, and in part because there wasn't that research available or any identification of these disabilities and their impact on children like me. So I've had to learn to manage my environment by compensating in any way that I could, and I always felt like an imperfect person rather than perfect neurodivergent. Like many of us, I have a very spiky skill set, and so I'm either really great at things or not so much, and that led to the people around me believing that I just wasn't trying or didn't want to do things when I seemed unable to pick things up that they found very easy. Similarly, my sensory aversions were considered to be preferences and choices, as opposed to a key part of my biology and the way I respond to my environment. I want to emphasize that before I had all of these labels, I was already carrying labels that other people had given me. I think that one of the myths around seeking diagnosis, particularly for children, but even as adults, is that people, will perceive us differently and we don't want to be labelled, and how's that label going to affect us? But as far as my self-esteem, I preferred having a reason for why I am the way I am than blaming everything in my life on having Tammy disorder. And I much prefer to know that I have learning disabilities and that I'm autistic to believing that I was lazy and selfish and uncaring and someone who didn't try, etc. So these diagnostic labels have been pretty good for me as far as my self-esteem, and starting to unpack so much of that shame and embarrassment that I've had throughout my life with different experiences where I didn't meet other people's expectations and I didn't meet my own expectations no matter how hard I tried. As everyone here's already talked about, that diagnosis is a privilege, and that was one thing I wanted to cover, was that there's this myth that neurodivergence is being overdiagnosed, and look, it's simply not true. To try and get a diagnosis of any of these neurominority conditions in Australia is really difficult. It's so expensive. It's a huge waiting list and seeing so many people, and it's so invasive, and you're made to feel so vulnerable. I haven't found the diagnostic process easy or simple, and it's even harder for families that have multiple people in the one family that need these diagnoses. And so, I think that that's important, that we respect that if someone has self-diagnosed or if they've gone through this process, that this is an integral part of their identity, and that it shouldn't be questioned by people whether someone is actually something or not if they tell you that they are. Because of all of those labels on paper, I read as someone who's not capable of working or really contributing to society in a meaningful way, and that's hard for me when I read those reports and documents. I have made the joke that with all of those, titles under my name, if it was academic qualifications, I'd look spectacular. But it's not something that I would want to, hand over as part of my resume when I'm applying for positions, because of all of those misconceptions around the disabilities. But I also, I'm more than just those words that are on those pieces of paper. Despite those reports, I'm actually a great worker and a volunteer and a parent and a wife and a friend, I'm much more valuable than those labels might make me appear to people who don't understand the disabilities. I do struggle on a daily basis with executive functionings like time management, like Beck. I have trouble hearing conversations, communicating verbally. understanding social cues. Learning is so hard for me. And, you know, paying attention also not easy, particularly when I'm not totally interested. And I'm also challenged constantly by the sensory issues, you know, the tastes, lighting, pain, touch. But I'm still an efficient employee, and I have brought value to every organisation that I've ever worked with. So, you know, my labels, they're not a full stop on my life, they're just an explanation.
Thank you so much for that, Tammy. And, you know, I think we could have a whole different workshop on labels and the impact of having a diagnosis in adulthood, whether that's positive or negative. And, you know, a lot of the difficulties that you just spoke about really resonated with me as someone with dyslexia. You know, some of those challenges I have as well. And I think, you know, it's really important that we can showcase the similarities we have in the workplace, how an organisation can support us, but then also the different areas that we actually struggle in depending on our neurominority and how that can be supported as well. But really the actual strengths that we are bringing to the workplace, because whether you're a neurominority or not, everyone brings strengths to a workplace, and everybody also comes with a set of areas that they need professional development in, because we're all a work in progress, no matter where we come from. And we all work in such different careers as well, which really fascinated me when we all met, because, you know, we're in research, we're in our own, running our own businesses, we're developing programs. So it also, I think, gives our listeners an idea of the breadth of where people are across the different industries that we're all working in as well. So when we're looking at our different careers, Beck, could you start us off with what you see as some of the challenges that you bring to the workplace, not just as a neurominority, but in general, you know, what strengths do you bring, and can you see us bringing to the workplace?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's so many strengths that people who are neurodivergent bring to the workplace. I guess speaking from my own experience as someone with ADHD, I do really well when I have lots to do and varying challenges and timelines, and lots of jobs are like that, particularly in this day and age where we have email coming in all the time, lots of different tasks with variability. So I need to keep my brain stimulated. I need lots to do. I do well when I have the opportunity to learn new skills and continually engage in professional development. There's flexibility in time and working location. I can work with lots of different people. When those things are met, which they are in my current job, so being a lecturer offers all of these things. I get to meet lots of different people, continually learn. There's constant deadlines and constant lots of different things to do. So I feel like strengths that I bring are things like the energy that I bring, I think, and the passion that I bring. Because I have the privilege of working in a job where I'm really passionate, which I think is really important for probably all people in general anyway, but particularly perhaps for people with ADHD who might have trouble regulating attention and focus. I'm really passionate, and I think the students that I teach can feel that passion from me. And because I'm really passionate about what I'm teaching, I'd like to think that I'm an interesting lecturer who keeps it pretty entertaining. Well, I try to be entertaining when I'm lecturing. I have a lot of positive energy, and I'm really energized by having lots of different demands, which I think is helpful in a university role where there's lots of different things going on, and could be helpful in lots of different jobs when my support needs are also met. So when I can wear these headphones, when I can control my working day, when I can have a bit of flexibility with what I do at what time of day, that's when I can bring these strengths. I'm a really great problem solver, and I actually think that lots of different people, lots of different neurominorities are great problem solvers. We tend to think differently. We experience the world in a different way to neurotypical people. We therefore think differently. We see different things. We often see patterns and can see the bigger picture, and can sometimes, Tammy mentioned, sometimes miss things that seem really easy to other people, which I agree, I do that. My family says, you have a PhD and you can't see that link. You can't do this simple task. I'm like, no, it's actually really challenging for me, but I can do really complex things actually and see really complex patterns, and they're just very easy to me. So I think that they're quite complementary to neurotypical people. I'm quite I guess I would say I'm exceptionally sensitive. That can be good in a sense in my job, because I'm sensitive to the needs of my students and those I teach and those I work with. I can usually pick up pretty quickly if something's going wrong and amend a situation. I'm sensitive to what's going on in the world. And I think that from my understanding, all neurodivergent people tend to be quite exceptionally sensitive. I'm not sure if that's because as neurominorities, we have not been so accepted. We've also always known we're a bit different. So we're more aware of what's going on as a protective thing, or it's something to do with our makeup as people. It means we feel the world in a very strong way, which can make us exceptionally passionate about particular areas, about advocacy, about supporting and helping people. And I think that a lot of these things are really great skills to have in the workplace. So that's what I see with regard to my skills. And there's lots of skills that I think align with ADHD and other neurominorities that we all bring to the workplace. Yeah.
Thank you. And that's such a broad list of strengths that people with ADHD bring to the workplace and neurominorities. And I think what I was hearing from you as well is that the environment that you're in has set you up to really succeed, and those workplace accommodations that you've been given, which is so important to ensuring that we really do succeed in the workplace, because I think otherwise sometimes we can be really set up to fail if we're not given those accommodations, and then the challenges or the areas that we struggle with can start to really show up. Want to comment on that?
Oh, were you talking to me? I had like, it cut out just at that point, and I was like, something comment on that?
Was there anything? I was just talking about how we sometimes, when we're not set up with the right work environment and the right accommodations, then we can start to struggle in the workplace. And from your experience and from the work you do with neurodiverse within your workplace, have you seen that yourself?
I'm confused, so I'll just say what I was going to say and we can just pretend that was the answer. When Beck was talking about being like thinking differently, that's exactly what I was actually going to say, is this sort of creative mind, I think, that I bring as a strength. And certainly in my writers and artists, they have these just amazing, creative, different thoughts that I also find really exciting. And from that perspective as well, I think, you know, there's a difference that is quite beautiful. And I think that's really not even necessarily neurodivergence, but I think just diversity in general. So at Be Your Best, we have people of color, we've got people who identify in the LGBTIQA+, I think I've got all of them, community, and we've got people who identify as non-binary, you know, and all these sorts of experiences of our differences, our diversities, and our neurotypes. You know, we bring something that other people don't. And I'm not saying that if you're, you know, white and male and straight, you don't have an interesting thought, because it's one of the things that I sort of wanted to say, is that all people bring amazing, interesting perspectives, and we need to respect everyone in that sort of environment.
Tammy, did you have anything else you wanted to add? Thanks, Autumn.
Look, we are living in an aging population, and we make up a significant amount of the number of people who have disabilities in Australia. And with the aging population, we know those disabilities are going to increase. So one of the advantages that we have is being able to forecast for employers some of the barriers to using products and services that their customers are going to be managing as well. We are great risk managers because most of us have spent our lives constantly watching other people, following patterns, like Beck said, and you know, looking for emerging issues. And so You know, we do bring so many advantages to the work we do. And like Beck said, all those adaptations that we've had to make to fit in and to do things differently does give us that different perspective. But the challenges for us in the workplace are usually the same challenges that impact people who don't have any disability. I see them often as universal issues, but it's more about the extent that we're impacted by them. So, for example, working in a disorganized environment that's unpredictable, poor communication, particularly about expectations on roles or tasks that should be done, open office environments, oh my gosh, no. The lighting, people walking either side of you, behind you, in front of you, all of the gossip and chit chat, the smell of everybody's lunches, the noises and mouth clacking and tapping and pen clicking around you, and just everything, you know, designed to make you unable to concentrate or do any of your work. You know, being asked to present something on the spot where everybody can see that you can't spell and that you write backwards. Not being given time to process ideas or prepare for meetings so that we can, you know, bring our best selves in. All of those things are really challenging, and probably most people would prefer that work environments adapt for everybody. But like I said, it's about the degree of how it impacts us. That is the big issue. But yeah, I'd say that that's some of the advantages and some of the challenges for me with working with other people, aside from the social cue thing, which is a big thing. Yeah.
Thank you, Tammy. And I really agree with all those challenges. Anybody can face those challenges. Some of the key things you talked about, you know, not having the opportunity to be prepared, or not having the time to reflect on a question before you're expected to answer it in a meeting. I mean, that can be anybody. You don't have to be a neurominority to struggle in that type of environment. And I think Autumn's reflection of the different positive energies and thoughts that people bring as a collective is really important in the workplace. And so I think when employers are looking at hiring neurodivergent people, they need to think about, you know, how we fit within the organisation is not that different to anybody else you're hiring in some aspects. We just need some support in certain areas like any other staff member would do. So I think it's great that we've been able to showcase the real strengths that we can bring to an organisation, and that those challenges can be generalised for a lot of people anyway, and it's only some tweaks that we may need to ensure that we're working to our best. Did anyone else want to add to that before we talk about some of the strategies that we like to use? Beck?
Yeah, and I guess this kind of leads in, but I'll make sure I don't go too much into strategies. But I did want to add that I really like that point. These challenges we're experiencing really are the same as lots of other people. It's just the extent to which we're impacted, which is often a really hard thing to explain to people and employers and make a case for, because we don't want to seem difficult, but there really are needs. And often they take really minor little adjustments. And sometimes they're blanket adjustments that you make for everyone. It actually just benefits everyone in the workplace because they're the same challenges everyone's having. And it's usually just really simple things that don't take time or money, or don't take a lot of time or a lot of money, that can just make such a huge difference. And so I think there are so many strengths that we can bring to the workplace, so many that are really invaluable when those support needs are met, even if they're just tiny little tweaks. And often it's really just about listening and respect, which is good workplace practice anyway.
And that's, I think, what we're really raising is what's best practice for an organisation to be inclusive of everybody. And it's, you know, those tweaks, like I know as a dyslexic person in one of my workplaces, we put Grammarly in for everybody because, you know, everybody comes with different levels of spelling and grammar. And so everyone having the opportunity to have Grammarly then enabled everyone to have access to a tool that was useful across the whole organisation. And that was just a small tweak. Then I didn't have to be embarrassed that I had it on my computer and no one else did, because everybody had the opportunity to use it. And there's some things like in Microsoft that everybody has the opportunity to use. So then it becomes generalized and it's not, oh, that person's got something that no one else has. And I think they're, you know, those little tweaks are so cost effective for everyone as well. There's some of the strategies that I use as a dyslexic in the workplace. I couldn't live without Grammarly. I couldn't live without text to speech. And what are some of the ones that you found are useful, Tammy, for you in the workplace?
For me, having those noise cancelling headphones and being able to wear sunglasses even inside, I think we can highlight how pale I am here. We've been joking about that, but seriously, vampire pale, and the same kind of reaction to sunlight. And so I get migraines when I'm exposed to fluorescent lights. I do better sitting in a corner, preferably a dark corner, so I don't have people startling me with my excessive startle reflex by suddenly approaching me from the side or talking to me from behind and me not registering that they're even speaking to me. I really benefit from having visual and written instructions, particularly when I'm learning a new task, because it does take me several goes to learn something and really get it in there. I'd love to be able to hear something once and run with it, or be shown something once and run with it, but that's not how my brain works. And so not shaming me about that. And just going, okay, you need a visual, and let's move on. Giving me an opportunity to spell check my work, and understanding that if you're texting me, it's going to be full of typos, not just because of my clumsy fingers, but also just because I type backwards. Awkward. Similarly, don't correct me constantly when I have word salad, where I go to say a word and something extraordinary comes out instead of that word. Everyone in the room heard it. We all know it was the wrong word, but let me fix it and move on. And also, you know, with the dyscalculia, don't ask me to do maths. Give me other options besides Excel sheets without embarrassing me. And understand that phone conversations for someone with auditory processing disorder are painful. I really can't hear you. And if you want to talk to me in a group environment, I can't hear you either. So, you know, just being aware of me and giving me space and time to feel safe and be vulnerable and let you know what I need. Those are the adaptations that have helped me the most.
And I can really resonate with some of those adaptations as well. Thank you for sharing, Tammy. Beck or Autumn, were there any other strategies that you found helpful in the workplace?
Something I wanted to add is, I think others have sort of covered it a little bit, but, you know, being allowed to be me, like it. I think, gosh, I can't remember the guy's name. I've been talking to him on LinkedIn. Well, the person who did his first like intro chat at the beginning of today, like the lived experience, that guy was saying that, you know, it's able to be himself, and that's really helped at work. And I think that that's sort of important too. Like, yes, I work from home, but like I've got a sensory jar, and I put a little, oh, can you see him? He's got little sticky eyes on him, and then I can like shake it up, and then I can see all of the little stars. You got a little, is that an avocado? Oh my God, that's so cute. I've also got a blankie, and I have blankie with me everywhere, to the point that, you know, I can't go to sleep without it. And my partner's like, I was like, where's Blanky? And he goes and grabs it and gets it for me. And, you know, having these little things around is sort of important. And then from that, like you said, Tammy, word salad, oh my gosh, it happens to me a lot. And then I go through every word near it, you know, like, because I feel like it might be dyslexia. It's just dyslexia, it's stored in a certain way. So if I want to say, can you get that item off the table. I was like, can you get the thing off that thing? Okay, it's a chair. No. It's a cupboard. No. And then you come up with things like it's a cow, you know, and then eventually you're like table, you know, and it's sort of, and I find that it can be really frustrating because people look at you like, oh my God, just get there. But I find it frustrating if someone jumps in and tries to answer that because it makes me feel stupid. Because I do, in my head, I can see the word, I can see the picture, but it's just not coming through, you know, and that can be really frustrating. But so that's one of the things, allowing that, but also allowing me to be totally direct. Like one of the things that I found in just different workshops when I've done, people have commented and said, hi, I'm autistic. I'm not really very good with the whole being nice thing. I just say it like it is. And people don't like that in the workplace. Well, I tell it like it is. And then I'm lucky enough that people do listen and they respect me to say it like it is. And I'm not considered, you know, a bitchy woman or whatever. That tends to be a gender thing that you get as a woman. But I'm considered someone who's talented and able and leader and this sort of thing. And I think that's really helpful when someone respects you at that level, to listen to what you're saying. And it might not come across super fantastic, you know, euphemistic, but I'm telling you like it is, okay? And that's actually a good thing, because when someone tells you like it is, there is no misunderstanding. It's not like it's vague, it's clear. And then just one other little thing, I know I don't want to go too much over time, Shae, but one of the other things that I think is really important is to say, I can't remember, either one of you might have, Beck, I think you might have said about being empathic and caring and vulnerable. You know, yes, autistics are direct a lot of the time, and perhaps completely hurt people's feelings, right? Okay, that's not really on us, that's on you guys interpreting it wrongly. But at the same time, in my experience and my writers and for myself and my artists and stuff who are autistic, they are so caring and open and genuine and vulnerable in their experience, and there is so much empathy there and just so much like love, and I feel like that's something that we often suggest that autistics don't have, or other neurominorities certainly can't be empathic, right? But I think they are, and that needs to be something that is seen as well. And if you are neurodivergent, to be allowed to be vulnerable, to be allowed to have a blankie, to be allowed to come into work and say, I'm really depressed today. I will do my job, but I'm not going to fire at all cylinders because I'm not able to. And for that to be accepted and recognized and seen as okay, and not to be fired because you're not doing your job well enough that day or whatever, you know, but just to have that openness and freedom at work. I think that is really important, because that's when you get your best. You know, if you can be loved and accepted even when you are on your shittest day, I mean, that's how we describe a healthy relationship, right, with a loved one. Why not at a workplace? That's technically a relationship too, you know, so we need to encourage that as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Autumn. I've written down lots of words here: authenticity, honesty, being vulnerable. We are known for being highly emotionally intelligent, and I think it comes back to Beck's point again before. For me, I feel like it's because we've had to struggle for so long, and we have an understanding of what other people are going through. And I think, you know, the opportunity to be authentic in the workplace is so important now, and the workplace is changing constantly, and it's asking for, and people are wanting our companies and our communities to be more vulnerable and have authenticity. So I'm really grateful that you touched on those areas, Autumn. Thank you. Was there anything else you wanted to add, Beck?
Yeah, I was just thinking about, so little adaptations for me in the workplace are similar to what Autumn and Tammy have mentioned, and things like wearing these headphones. So if I'm working on campus or in any other job, super helpful to help me to see if I'm doing something I'm not super interested in, but I need to do. I can play music that I'm familiar with that helps stimulate my brain, but helps me get the task done, or I can get them to block out the noise all around me and help control my environment. I self-manage in lots of different ways, like things like trying not to book too many meetings in a day. I do have a lot of autonomy and flexibility in my role, which is fortunate, and part of what I can do. One thing that I find super helpful is just talking to people that I'm working with about my communication preferences and asking them about their communication preferences too. And so instead of me saying, this is what I need, I also say, this is how I work. How do you work? And often I find that people say to me, oh gosh, I've never thought about that before. I have an option here. And so if we're going to be working together on some kind of collaborative project, we set up some rules and we write them down. And it might just be that we don't have meetings on Friday because the other staff member prefers to keep Friday's meeting free because that's their day to not be, too busy. Or they prefer not to have phone calls. They prefer emails instead, because phone calls can be challenging, like you said, Tammy. And I'd like to have things booked in advance. So for me, it's a lot about really just transparency. I like to know exactly what's happening, clarity in advance. I ask a lot of questions. I let people know I ask a lot of questions. It's not that I'm challenging or questioning what's being done. It's just that I need a really clear picture of, okay, that's happening on Tuesday. This is where I need to go, what I need to do, what it's going to look like. I can be organized. And that's usually really stuff that everyone wants to know. And so I find it's about transparency, clarity, openness, respect and kindness. And when I just ask other people their preferences, that's been the key thing that has helped me and has helped other people, neurodivergent or not, within the workplace, I think. So yeah, just being open myself about what I need, but also asking other people so that those accommodations are kind of given to everyone. But same as Tammy, I'm also vampire light, and I can't deal with brightness. I have a salt lamp here. I've got fairy lights outside. I can't turn the overhead lights on even in my own home. And I BYO'd curtains to my office at the university until I got blinds installed. So light is a tricky one too. But these are all pretty small things, that can be easily implemented.
And we're looking at different working styles, aren't we, for everybody? I mean, it really resonated with me what you're saying about, because you're really structured, but for me, I'm very unstructured. And so as a manager, managing a team with my disability, it's like, how do you manage different people's working styles? And by having those open, honest conversations between what you need and what your staff need or your team members, that's just gold standard of how we should be working anyway, I think. And it's really interesting around the meetings, I think, particularly as we're so virtual at the moment, and that's our way of communicating. It's important for managers, employers to understand that those back-to-back meetings are exhausting for everybody, not just neurominority, but they can be exhausting. And so it's thinking about how do we adapt our work environments depending on whether we're at home or whether we're in the workplace. For me, I'd rather someone calls me than sends me an email, because I know that my emails can be misconstrued. So it's much easier for someone to pick up the phone and have a 5-minute conversation and we can work it out than going back and forth in an email. So it's interesting the different ways we need support. That's just generally how we would work anyway in a cooperative working environment. Autumn, did you want to add anything else to that?
I just wanted to add, set alarms for lunch. That's one of the things I do, because I get so focused, like total blinkers on what I'm doing, that if I do not set alarms to eat food and even go to the toilet, I don't. And then it's like, the only reason I know that it's time to go downstairs is my partner comes up and goes, the baby's going to sleep. Are you actually going to come down? And I'm like, oh gosh, it's like 6:30, like it just, and the whole day's gone by and I haven't peed and I haven't eaten, and it just
hangry.
Exactly. And hangry and needing to pee is probably just the worst.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Autumn, for adding that very important reminder for all of us, especially as we work from home and we're sitting at our computers so much more. We are running out of time. We've had such an amazing conversation, and as when we met last week, I said I could be talking to you on so many different topics. Disclosure is such a big issue in the workplace as well, which we haven't had the opportunity to talk about today. But we're going to go to some questions because we've got a few coming through. So, but before we go to that, just quickly, does anyone have any one or two words around how we could be raising the profile of neurodiversity in the workplace before we go to the questions? Tammy?
Look, I do. It's not going to be one or two though, but I'm going to try, okay, to keep it short. Look, just like everyone who is joining us in this panel, I want to enjoy coming to work and belonging to a welcoming environment. And, you know, it helps us when you do learn about our disabilities, but please refer to blogs written by adults with disabilities and look at YouTube videos. There's so many, and don't just rely on diagnostic criteria. Remember that we are individuals and that we all have our own backgrounds and skill sets and communication styles, even though we do share a diagnosis. Darian mentioned this today. I want to reiterate, don't expect more of us than you expect of other employees. Please, we're not all geniuses or savants. I don't have any superpowers other than being resilient. And the reason I've burst into flames is I have to get this out. Something happened last night that was just abhorrent to me, and that was one of my biggest challenges, and I wanted to bring that up, which is that people responding negatively to me being neurodivergent by discounting my diagnosis or minimizing my challenges, or comparing me to people with more visible higher support needs. It hurts me and it hurts our community. Senator Holly Hughes made a speech in Parliament that she posted on Facebook last night, where she literally stated that adult autistics are so-called experts, even if we have higher degrees, and that we have no right to represent people with higher support needs. And she also claimed that people that don't use verbal speech to express themselves can't communicate. This is not true, and it's so insulting. And those public attacks on our community and on my identity and my right to challenge stereotypes and ableism, that impacts me really negatively. And we need our workplaces to be that one place, like Autumn and Beck were saying, where we are recognised for our knowledge and our skills, and where we're valued for being perfectly neurodivergent. And throughout the summit, the panels have been challenging the audience to please move from being aware to being active allies. And I want to put a call out to all of you as our allies to please not let these things go past without saying something, without taking action. You know, that saying about what we walk past, we accept. As an adult who is autistic and neurodivergent, I intimately understand what it feels like. But as a minority person, I don't get to speak out in public when people like Holly Hughes make these statements, because I'm going to be accused of being angry or being a bully, which is what the dominant culture uses to shame minority groups into being quiet. Our allies, the people that we work with, can defend us and our lived experiences, and we need to hear and see you stand up for us and talk to people around you about what we're capable of and our human rights and our rights to be involved in the workplace. And, you know, you can help us get those supports for dyslexia and for ADHD into our schools and into the NDIS. So please be active allies and help us, work with us so that we can change that narrative and stop these negative statements being made publicly and unchallenged about us.
Thank you so much, Tammy. I started to get emotional as you talked about that, because you know, we sometimes are such unheard voices, and you know, we find that we're not supported and understood in the workplace. And you know, being an ally is what we need, because you know, together we are stronger in the workplace and in society as a whole. So thank you for raising that. And again, we could have so many conversations around disability and human rights, but we will go back to the questions that have come through. But thank you again, Tammy, for those words.
Thanks,
First
Shae.
up, okay, this is a great question, and I've been asked this before. If you could go back now, if my reading gets jumbled, please excuse me, being dyslexic, but if you could go back 10 or 20 years, what do you wish you knew back then? What would have made your journey easier? Does anyone want to start with that question?
I'll start. I'm still quite emotional by what Tammy said, so I hope I don't. I'll probably just sound emotional. It's I didn't even know. I don't watch the news, so it's like it was news to me when the quarantine was on. I didn't even know. But now I've forgotten what I was going to say. What was the question again, Shae?
What would you, if you could
go
look back? Yeah. What would have made your journey easier?
I would have told myself that I really am dyslexic and it's okay. And I would have told myself that I'm autistic and that, I'm not normal, which was the thing I was always told. I'm not normal. I'm not doing the right thing. I'm wrong. I'm too energetic. I'm weird. All this sort of stuff, which came a lot from my family, actually, but also from the outside. And if I could tell myself that and, be that little voice that was positive, I don't think I would have necessarily been as depressed. And I think that I would have believed more in myself. I mean, just talking to my partner recently, I've always wanted to be a stand-up comedian. and I mean, I know I wouldn't probably made no money, but I think that, because artists don't make much money, but then I think I would have been more confident to just try and do something crazy like that, because I wouldn't care if someone thinks I was weird or if it was wrong or strange. It's me, although I do love my job now. I just kind of wish that I could have told myself that it's okay being me.
Thank you, Autumn. Yes, I agree with everything you just said then. What about Beck, for yourself?
I agree with what Autumn said, and just echoing something that Tammy said before that I wrote down about being thinking years ago that I was an imperfect person rather than a perfect neurodivergent. I love that, Tammy, so much. I guess for so many years, I'm a bit much sometimes, is how I'm described. I feel a bit much. I've got a bit much energy for people. I've got a bit much optimism and positivity that it crosses over with that toxic positivity thing that people kind of tend to bring up. I think sometimes, or maybe sometimes, I come across as a bit naive or a bit much, I suppose. I've got a lot of energy, and that served me well in lots of ways. It's good for when you're passionate about something. It certainly helped me in my career, but it's made me, I wish that I knew that I had ADHD, and I wish I knew what ADHD was. I didn't know what ADHD was. Even when I was an autism researcher, I still really didn't know much about other neurodivergent conditions and what ADHD was. And people would say to me, of course you don't have ADHD. ADHD is young boys who are naughty, I'm a very typical case from my understanding of a woman with ADHD. I had 10 jobs during my PhD. I had 3 jobs when I was a year 12 student. I have constantly been busy. I worked full-time while I studied full-time in hospitality, and that used up all my energy. So that was great. And it was kind of hid that I had ADHD. So I guess I just wish that I knew that I had ADHD, and I just can't explain the difference that knowing has made in my life. So in the past couple of years, gosh, I understand myself so much more, and I'm so much kinder to myself, and I accept myself so much more. And I can just say to students, I have ADHD, I talk a lot, I go on tangents. Please let me know if my style of learning is not helpful for you, and I will try to adjust it. But sometimes I am a bit much and I can't change that, but I can change some things about the way I teach. So I try to just be very open, and I'm just so much more accepting of myself. And there's a comic, Danny Donovan is a artist who has ADHD, who draws comics about having ADHD. And I think it applies to all neurodivergent people, or lots of us, whereby there's these triangles and circles, and the triangle comes along to a group of circles and wants to fit in, and they kind of point at the triangle and laugh, and then the triangle decides to cut its angles off to fit in, and it still doesn't fit in, and they laugh at it. And it's not until other shapes that have cut themselves up and then bandaged themselves back together come over to the triangle and bandage them up and say, hey, we're a group and you fit in and you belong. And it's just that, it's just, I'm sure it's similar to lots of other minority groups. It's just about belonging and being ourselves, being able to come to work as ourselves, accepting ourselves, understanding that the things that we thought were just because we were, say for me, I thought, why can't I pay attention to this lecture? Why don't I understand this concept? Turns out I take a bit longer to process things because I have likely a skewed IQ profile, and my processing speed and working memory a bit slower comparative to my verbal comprehension and perceptual reasoning. It's not that I'm not intelligent, it's just that I process things in a different way. Now I understand that. So I just think it would have been so different, my education journey, and just my self-acceptance. And then that therefore changes how I interact with people and how I interact with the world. So really just echoing what Tammy and Autumn have really, and you said, Shae, the whole time. Gosh, it would be so nice to learn earlier on about these conditions, what they are, how we have them, what that means, and be able to accept ourselves and have others understand and accept us.
I know we're kind of running out of time, Shae, but I kind of wanted to just add one other thing there, is that one of the questions that we were given ages ago was about career, and I feel like in that way, not knowing, I've never had a career until now, and I'm 40. I think so. I think I'm 40. Yes, am I 40 now? I can't remember. Anyway, I think I'm 40. And I haven't had a career until now. And at the time, I knew I could do it. I knew I could do it from being like 17, 18. I knew I had amazing things to give the world, but nobody really gave me a chance until now. And so now I can finally, I think, live my fullest potential, to sound really corny. But yeah, I really feel like now I can really make a difference. And I just wish I could have done that earlier,
Yes, yeah, I wish I could have known earlier too. So, but I think sometimes we're in this point in our lives, we're meant to be here, where we are now. Tammy, did you have anything else you wanted to add? Andrew's popped up. I think I've done well to keep to time though, as a disorganized dyslexic at times. Tammy, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Look, I think Autumn and Beck really had that same imaginary conversation that I would have had with younger me too. I was also too much, too loud, too noisy, too bouncy, too dramatic, too. Yeah, I would just like to hug young Tammy for the longest time and say, be your bright, bouncy, loud, weird little self, because you're okay. And people are going to like you later. Hang in there, but don't stop trying to be smaller and be invisible, and stop trying to be what everyone else is telling you, and just be you. And don't spend your whole life trying to figure out who she is and whether it's safe to be her. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, ladies. I'm sorry, there were a number of other questions that we didn't get to answer. So I'm not sure what happens with those, Andrew, whether we answer them separately or you'll let us know. But I just wanted to thank the three of you so much. It's been such a privilege and an honour to talk to you today about all the wonderful conversations we've had. And I'd like to thank the Autism CRC for having me on and for giving us the opportunity to talk today about our challenges, but really our strengths and what life is like for us, which is up and down like our spiky profile. But, we are who we are, and one day the world will accept us in the workplace. So thank you again. Thank you, Andrew. Is there anything else we need to say?
Just a few wrap-up comments, but thank you so much. I think some of the team are crying back here, so you've really touched everyone's hearts. So thanks, Tammy and Autumn and Beck and Shae. Thank you for moderating.